Native Americans, also known as American Indians, Indigenous Americans, and by various other terms, are the original inhabitants of the United States, with the exception of Hawaii. The term Indian was a misnomer given by Christopher Columbus, who mistakenly believed he had landed in the East Indies. The history of Native Americans in the United States spans tens of thousands of years, beginning in the ancient Ice Age. During this period, humans are believed to have journeyed across the Bering Land Bridge, a natural connection between Siberia and Alaska, migrating gradually across the land and southward into what is now Mexico and beyond. These early inhabitants explored vast territories, establishing settlements and creating diverse cultures along the way. By around 1000 BCE, their descendants had spread across nearly the entire continent, from the northern tundras to the temperate forests, deserts, and coastal regions. The vast migration patterns highlight the resilience and adaptability of early Native Americans as they encountered diverse ecosystems and climates, using innovation and cooperation to thrive. Over the millennia, Native Americans developed an extraordinary variety of languages, cultures, and civilization. As they migrated and adapted to new environments, they created distinct tribal identities, similar to the diverse ethnic groups found in Europe, Asia, and Africa. Following the end of the Ice Age, these groups began to develop more permanent societies by making efficient use of the natural resources available to them. They cultivated staple crops such as corn, squash, and beans, domesticated animals including turkeys, llamas, and guinea pigs, and developed innovative hunting techniques to target species like deer, bison, and sea mammals. Their fishing methods ranged from using nets and traps to constructing fish weirs that redirected currents. This mastery of their environment allowed Native Americans to create thriving communities and complex societal structures. Many of their advancements were deeply interwoven with spiritual beliefs, which revered nature as a sacred and interconnected system, guiding their agricultural, hunting, and architectural practices. One of the most remarkable achievements of pre-Columbian Native American societies was the construction of mound complexes, which served as ceremonial and governmental centers. These massive earthworks, which extended from the Midwestern United States to southern Peru, demonstrate their advanced engineering skill. Many of these mounds were flat-topped and supported palaces, temples, and other important structures, while others were used as burial sites for leaders and notable figures. Cities like Cahokia, located near present-day St. Louis, rivaled the size and sophistication of European cities of the same period, showcasing finely crafted architecture and complex urban planning. The remnants of these cities and their monumental mounds continue to inspire admiration and curiosity, offering glimpses into the cultural achievements of Native Americans before European contact. Such achievements underscore the intellectual and cultural prowess of indigenous societies, debunking long-held Eurocentric myths that often underestimated the sophistication of Native American civilizations. The arrival of Europeans in 1492 marked a turning point that profoundly reshaped the lives of Native Americans. Spanish explorers, who first encountered the indigenous populations in Florida and along the Gulf Coast, initiated a period of exploration and colonization that spanned from the 16th to the 19th century. These encounters often resulted in devastating consequences for Native Americans, particularly through the introduction of epidemic diseases. Lacking immunity to illnesses such as measles, smallpox, cholera, and influenza, indigenous populations experienced catastrophic declines. Historians widely agree that disease was the single most significant factor contributing to the dramatic reduction in Native American populations. though warfare, displacement, and enslavement also played critical roles. The rapid and widespread depopulation caused by these factors created power vacuums and destabilized once thriving societies, leaving survivors vulnerable to further exploitation and conquest. The Columbian Exchange, which facilitated the transfer of animals, plants, and diseases between the Old and New worlds, dramatically altered indigenous ways of life. The horse, introduced by the Spanish, became particularly transformative. Escaping captivity and thriving in the wild, horses rapidly multiplied and were adopted by many Native American tribes. They revolutionized transportation, hunting, and warfare, giving rise to the famed equestrian cultures of the Great Plains. Tribes like the Comanche and Sioux became expert horsemen, using their mounts to expand their territories, conduct raids, and follow buffalo migration. Meanwhile, European colonization efforts intensified, driven by a desire to establish new agricultural settlements and create economic opportunities for an expanding European population. The introduction of firearms, iron tools, and other European goods further complicated the balance of power among tribes, leading to both alliances and rivalries as Native Americans adapted to the changing landscape. The American Revolution further complicated the dynamics between Native Americans and European settlers. During the war, Native American nations east of the Mississippi River were divided in their allegiances. Many sided with the British, hoping to halt the westward expansion of American colonists onto their lands, while others supported the Patriots in exchange for promises of protection and trade advantages. However, the aftermath of the Revolution brought increased pressure on Native American lands. The fledgling United States sought to expand its territory, driven by the demand for farmland and the ambitions of settlers and land speculators. While early U.S. policy under leaders like George Washington and Henry Knox advocated for the civilization of Native Americans, offering education and agricultural training, these efforts often masked the underlying goal of land acquisition. The push for territorial expansion ultimately prioritized settler interests over indigenous sovereignty, setting the stage for decades of conflict and dispossession. The Indian Removal Act of 1830, signed into law by President Andrew Jackson, marked a turning point in U.S. policy toward Native Americans. This legislation authorized the forced relocation of Native American tribes from their ancestral homelands in the southeastern United States to designated territories west of the Mississippi River. The most infamous result of this policy was the Trail of Tears, during which thousands of Cherokee, Creek, Seminole, Chickasaw, and Choctaw people were forcibly removed from their lands, suffering immense hardship and loss of life during their journey to Indian Territory in present-day Oklahoma. These removals disrupted tribal societies, destroyed cultural continuity, and further marginalized Native Americans in their struggle to maintain autonomy and identity. The forced migrations also revealed the resilience and determination of Native communities, as they sought to rebuild and preserve their cultures despite overwhelming adversity. Throughout the 19th century, conflicts between Native Americans and the U.S. government intensified, culminating in the Indian Wars. These conflicts, which spanned several decades, included notable events such as the Dakota War, the Great Sioux War, the Colorado War, and the Apache Wars. These wars were characterized by fierce resistance from Native American warriors and brutal military campaigns aimed at subduing indigenous resistance. One of the last major confrontations of this era was the Wounded Knee Massacre in 1890, during which U.S. cavalry forces killed hundreds of Lakota men, women, and children. This tragic event marked the symbolic end of armed Native American resistance to U.S. expansion, though the struggle for Native sovereignty and rights continued in other forms. These wars, while devastating, also produced stories of incredible bravery and leadership among native figures, whose legacies continue to inspire movements for justice and equality. The 20th century brought significant legal and political changes for Native Americans. In 1919, under President Woodrow Wilson, Native Americans who had served in World War I were granted U.S. citizenship as recognition for their contributions to the war effort. This was formalized and expanded in 1924 with the passage of the Indian Citizenship Act, signed by President Calvin Coolidge, which extended citizenship to all Native Americans born within U.S. territories. Despite these advancements, many Native Americans face persistent discrimination and barriers to full participation in American political life, including voter suppression and challenges to their sovereignty. Efforts to combat these injustices gained momentum in the later half of the century, with the rise of the Native American civil rights movement, which sought to protect tribal autonomy and preserve cultural heritage. Today, Native Americans maintain a vibrant presence in the United States, with tribes exercising varying degrees of self-governance and cultural revival. Tribal governments operate schools, healthcare facilities, and cultural programs, while indigenous languages, ceremonies, and traditions are being preserved and revitalized. However, controversies persist over issues such as federal jurisdiction, resource rights, and cultural preservation. Native Americans continue to advocate for greater recognition of their sovereignty and the protection of their sacred lands and traditions, ensuring that their rich and diverse heritage endures for future generations. The resilience of these communities serves as a testament to their enduring spirit, and their contributions to American society remain invaluable in shaping the nation's identity.